have enough. Is it long enough? He got it!
Welcome, Husker Nation, to Post Game Spread, presented by Hurrdat Sports.
His second interception on the season. Multiple flags come down on the return.
Breaking down the highs and lows of what we just witnessed from our beloved Cornhuskers.
5, touchdown Nebraska.
It's time to let it all out. Join the conversation on YouTube or Twitter at Hurrdat Sports, or live in person at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill.
I'm done. Let's go. Let's go.
It's time for Post Game Spread.
Spread it on.
Welcome into the post-game spread. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Jared Hall from No Block, No Rock with me here this afternoon, where we know nothing but pain and suffering as we watch Nebraska lose 13-10 to put it politely, is a pretty bad Maryland team.
Maryland sucks.
But Nebraska sucks more, is what we learned today. Okay, so there's no way to like softly walk into this, so let's just go scorched earth right away. Marcus Satterfield's a problem. So here's let me put this. It can't just be that all three quarterbacks are so damn inept that they can't keep from throwing to the wrong team or they can't hold on to the football. That's not a thing. Illinois' backup quarterback threw for 316 yards in the first half today.
In the first half.
He was by the middle of the third quarter, he was the season single game passing leader for the Big Ten, for the entire conference. By the middle of the third quarter, and he is their backup quarterback. Nebraska, I'm not asking for someone to even throw for 200 yards a game. Just stop throwing into triple coverage. There's some disconnect between whatever's happening in practice, whatever Marcus Satterfield is telling them, and what's going on to the field, because I genuinely do not believe that you can just have that many inept quarterbacks. Like, by accident, one of them would not throw interceptions.
What are you seeing in practice?
What are you teaching in practice?
Like,
what are they teaching in practice? Because listen, if we were going to give Marcus Satterfield credit for look how much, earlier in the year, look how much Heinrich Harburg has improved since the spring game or improved since fall camp or whatever, then we also have to give him blame when all the quarterbacks are total dog shit.
Gosh, remember in the spring game when they fumbled 8 times?
And we're like, oh, they'll clean that up. No,
fine.
They won't.
Shh,
they won't.
Don't worry about those 8 fumbles. It's not going to rear its ugly head later. It's fine.
It's not going to rear its ugly head every damn second of every damn game this season.
Every game. Dude, 5 turnovers today. And they forced 3 themselves.
You know how bad it would have been if the defense wasn't like, hey, Maryland, we're going to make you turn it over here so that you don't score again?
It got to the point where normally when you watch a game, you say, defense, get off the field. Defense, awesome. Third down stop, you forced a punt. Now the offense can go on the field. Awesome. Normally you would say those things if it was a normal freaking team. You don't even want the defense to leave the field with this freaking team, because when the defense is on the field, that is their best chance to score.
At least you have some level of confidence that the thing that is supposed to happen has any chance of happening. Like, I don't understand not just the ineptitude on offense, because, I mean, okay, here's a thing that pisses me off also.
Oh, man.
Emmett Johnson, guess how many yards per carry Emmett Johnson had today? Don't look at it.
I'm not even looking.
Don't look at it.
I'm going to assume like 5.7.
It was 5. He had 5
Okay.
yards a carry.
Okay.
How many carries did he have? 17, okay? How is that number not 25?
Fine.
How is that number not 25? Like, I don't care about balance. I don't care about any of that.
No.
Michigan ran the ball 32 consecutive times to end the game today.
32?
32 consecutive. They didn't throw it after the second quarter.
That's a dream.
And listen, I understand, Michigan's better than, Penn State's better than freaking Maryland, too.
Maryland sucks.
Like, the difference between Michigan and Penn State is probably in the neighborhood of the difference between Nebraska and Maryland. Like, how is that possible? They're just like, yeah, we're Michigan. We don't need to throw the ball. And you actually have functional skill position players on offense. And Nebraska's like, no. We've got the ball on the goal line. It's third down. If we just run it up the middle again, we can kick the field goal to take a lead in this game with under 3 minutes left. No, let's get our third string quarterback who has thrown 2 passes all freaking season to throw it on the goal line with the game on the line. That seems like a really good idea, Marcus Satterfield. What are we doing?
I want to cry.
Rule needs, listen, it's on the quarterbacks too.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's across 3 freaking quarterbacks, there has to be another factor. And that factor is Marcus Satterfield.
There's a common denominator.
Because he's not just the offensive coordinator, he's also the quarterback's coach.
And, you can get into why he is the quarterback's coach and Jake Peets going to the Rams or whatever.
How dare you do this to us, Jake Peets, first of all.
Jake Peets' fault.
How dare you? You are dead to us here in Nebraska. I don't care if you're a native son.
Marcus Satterfield this week said, Matt Rule challenged me. We got to get Emmett Johnson more touches. And I had said earlier this week, I said, if he doesn't get 20 touches.
Technically, he did have 20. He had 3 receptions.
So he did get 20.
Yeah.
Well, good for him. But I'm just saying, you think that's enough?
No.
With these quarterbacks,
he is the only
field,
functional part of the offense.
5.7 yards per carry, like you said.
Just 5. He was 5 even. 5 even.
I guessed 5.7.
Yeah, you Jeff 5. It's 5 even.
5 is great.
That's a great number. You run him until that's down to 4. He's the only functional part of the offense.
Heinrich Harburg, Jeff Sims, Chubba Purdy. 0 for 3.
I don't even put that on Purdy. Was it a good throw? No. But how do you put him in that position if you're Marcus Satterfield? I think Rule has to take play calling away from him. I think he does. Because he is just drunk at the wheel. They run the ball for 1 series and it's going great. And he's like, nope, we're going to throw it a bunch next series. He cannot help himself from being an idiot.
Take the toy away. When we hired Satterfield from South Carolina, you heard a lot of South Carolina fans going, thank God he's gone. And of course, as Husker fans, we are eternal optimists. Yeah. We say, they're just bitter about whatever. They're just talking shit.
And listen, I've tried to be incredibly gracious with Marcus Satterfield because of the nature of what's happened on offense with the injuries and everything, right? Mm-hmm. But listen, I thought the offensive line played freaking great today. They had clean pockets all day.
All day.
Ridiculously clean pockets all day. They're running the ball well. 4.6 yards a carry as a team on 40 rushes. Okay? 183 total yards. They had clean pockets for the quarterbacks all day.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the offensive line played great, so I don't care if it's starters or not in there. I thought the offensive line played really well.
They did.
I thought the running backs, okay, I get that you're down your first 2 and even 3 because Anthony Grant's only carried it 3 times. You're down to your 4-string running back coming into the year. Guess what? Emmett Johnson might be the best running back on the team.
He is.
Okay?
There's no doubt.
I get that you're down to your number 1 and then 6, 7, 8 wide receivers. So maybe stop throwing the damn ball so much.
Quit using that as an excuse.
That should be the reason to stop throwing the ball, you idiot.
Man.
What are we doing here?
I've never, these other games that Nebraska's lost, I've always been, with Michigan State, I wasn't even mad. But there's something about this game that just really freaking gets under my skin.
Because they should have won.
They should have freaking won the game.
They should have won. And it literally, the offensive, it's not even ineptitude. It's actively working against the goal. Ineptitude is we just can't do anything right. They are actively doing more things wrong than they are right. And it's that makes it so infuriating today because Maryland is, the thing that we were worried about didn't even happen with Talia Tagovailoa throwing it all over the yard. Yeah, he had, what did he have? 283 yards passing.
Yeah.
And that's a good number. But it was on 40 attempts, and he really didn't hurt you.
No, he did not. That last drive, sure, you could point out the actually first penalty that Nebraska got all game. First penalty Bad timing.
Yes, but they only had one penalty all game, which is they've had one penalty the last 2 games. That's incredible. It's been in 8 quarters they have one penalty.
And you could point to the refs and say blah blah. No,
listen. If you only have one penalty over the course of a game, that's good enough to win.
Yes,
right?
it is.
That's a terrific number. It was 1-10. Right? Maybe they missed some calls on Maryland. Whatever. If that's the ratio, you have to be pleased with that.
Maryland is so they were playing like Nebraska usually does, with the undisciplined things that they were doing, with the mistakes. At one point in the game, I believe it was 10 penalties to 0.
Yeah, it was.
What more do you need, guys, on offense? Every time the defense got on the field, man, crappy positions over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the drive that Purdy was in, they started at the 3-yard line.
His own 3.
And that's the first time you put a guy in the entire season. Listen, I was clamoring for Purdy as much as anybody after what we saw today, but you're going to put a guy in the first time all year on his own 3-yard line. And guess what? He drove him all the way down the field. Doing what? Not throwing the ball.
No,
he had one completed pass on that drive. You had Purdy, who surprisingly mobile. I know he was a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school, but all we heard was, he's not as mobile as the other guys. And he's not. Although he looked more mobile than Heinrich has recently.
Yeah.
But ran the ball well, ran the ball with the running backs well. And what did we get? A crazy play call on 3rd down to prevent even an opportunity to score points.
You could have taken the lead with this offense, this inept offense.
Which the way the first half ended, that's crazy that was even on the table.
Listen, I'm trying. I just want to take a deep breath because
I'm trying here, man. I'm trying.
So it's Veterans Day, right?
Yeah.
Veterans Day. I got your 6. I got your back.
Yeah.
This was Nebraska's opportunity to say, I got your 6.
Defense, we have your back.
Now, for my 6, it was, this is your chance for a bowl game. I got your, hey, Nebraska football fans.
Your literal
I got your
6th win. Yeah.
Right here.
Here's your 6th win.
It was there.
But even from like a more literal perspective on the team, right? Coach Rule's talking about, hey, we want to embody a lot of the principles that our veterans, like the self-sacrifice and the discipline and picking each other up, right? The offense has to pick up the defense. And listen, I understand they're not going to execute probably at a real high level at any point this year. That's just kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting that. But when you get in a position to put points on the board, just get the field goal. And listen, I'm not saying you have to run a play that you're like, oh, there's no way we're going to score on this running play. You're better at running the ball than throwing the ball. How does that seem like the better option?
Anytime Nebraska got a 1-yard gain, a 2-yard gain, we were like, yes, they still have the ball.
Yes, literally that was the thing that we were doing every time Nebraska ran a play and still had the football.
That's a positive.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they gained 2 yards. And they still have the ball.
Miracle. I didn't even know that was allowed.
Oh, my gosh. Do it for the veterans. Make a bowl game for the veterans. Get a 2-yard gain. Don't give the ball over to the other team. They did it 5 times. And
Five.
So entering the game, I believe they were -12 in the country. You give the ball away 5. You take it away 3 yourself.
Yes. So you're -2. So that's another -14. On the season.
Going into this game, people were like, maybe we don't turn the ball, maybe just once.
I mean,
5 times.
I mean, listen, if they took it away 3 times, I thought they would have had a positive, or at the very least, an even turnover margin.
-2.
I can't believe they were still -2 getting 3 takeaways. Because that's the thing we complained about last week, right? It's like, the offense gave it up 3 times. That's what you kind of have to expect. But the defense didn't get any. They didn't help them out any. Well, guess what? The defense got their takeaways this time. One of them, especially in a crucial situation.
Yes.
Basically on the goal line, preventing Maryland from getting a go-ahead touchdown. And the offense is like, nope, we're going to give that thing right back.
So, okay. So, like, quarterback by quarterback, right?
Oh, gosh.
So I know. Oh, my God, I know. Torture.
Honestly, just the prospect. I mean, we'll do it. But the prospect of thinking about them all individually like makes me a little nauseous.
So Heinrich Haarberg, right?
That might be my hangover from yesterday, but I think it's the quarterbacks.
There's one play in my mind where he did something right, and that was the throw to Malachi Coleman in the middle of the field that Malachi dropped.
It was still a little
Fine,
behind him, but a
fine.
very catchable ball. Very
It was.
catchable ball.
2 picks.
Yep.
He leaves the field. He's gimpy. He goes in the tent, and I go, Ravi, not like this. It can't be like this. And you, in so many words, said, if it's got to be like this, then it's got to be like this.
I said it's how it happened with Jeff Sims, right?
It's how it happened with Sims.
We were frustrated with Sims. We were frustrated with the way he was turning the ball over the first 2 weeks of the season. And he goes and gets a little beat up. And then Haarberg takes over. And for a couple games, looks better, takes care of the football. And that's the thing that is frustrating, why it took so long for Haarberg to get pulled. Because they said he was available. I don't know if he was 100% or if it was an emergency available situation or whatever. But the frustrating thing with what took him so long to get pulled was for a couple games, he was taking care of the ball better. For a couple games, he was giving you everything out of the run game that you were getting out of Sims still. All of those things have evaporated in the last 6 games from Haarberg. He isn't running the way he was. I don't know if he's banged up or whatever, which is totally reasonable. Like, he runs the ball hard. He gets hit a lot. If he's banged up, that totally makes sense. But he wasn't running it the way he used to. And he definitely was no longer taking care of the football.
No.
So I'm not saying you have to go back to Jeff Sims, who, for, again, a couple drives looked good, looked kind of like you would hope he did. And you're like, I could forgive the interception at the end of the half. They're kind of trying to make something out of nothing there. I was willing to give him a pass on that one. But
then
the fumble.
2 hands.
I mean,
2 hands on the
carrying
football.
the thing out. I mean, if you're watching, he's carrying the thing out here, and he knows. Here's the thing that drives me crazy is he knows he's in traffic, right? Because the reason the ball was out here was because he juked to make a guy miss. So he knows he's in traffic. He knows there's other bodies around. So maybe you say, hey, maybe I don't need the extra yard. Let's just wrap up. Let's just wrap up the ball and fall. Like, listen, you can keep trying to run, keep trying to make people miss. Just wrap up the ball. Like, that's not a hard ask.
Not only that, okay? Nebraska was on their own. I believe it was like the 10-yard line. Sims fumbles. So you got Maryland right there, right in Nebraska's red zone. Nebraska's defense gives up a field goal on that drive. Because once again, this freaking defense, man. Javin Wright showed up today. Interception, forced fumble.
Yeah, and the forced fumble was incredible. He was the second guy coming in as the Maryland, I think it was a receiver or receiver running back. I don't know. The Maryland ball carrier,
a skill player,
was going down, and he doesn't just come in and make the hit, which he does. He also gets his hand in there and flips that thing out. If I saw it right on the replay, an incredible on-purpose play to make a play for the team to make sure Maryland doesn't score there. The defense picked them up so many times. And it's going to be so easy for people to point to the last drive. And come on, man, for freaking 59 minutes. Yeah. This defense did more than they should have. More than you could possibly ask from them. What more do you want? 4th and 1. Nash Hutmacher. Stuffs. 4th and 1. Yeah. And then we go, the very next play was the Sims fumble. Like, I mean, what do you want? Do you want Jack Wochi? Do you want Jack Wochi? I don't know. I don't want any. I don't think it matters. That's my point with Satterfield, is I don't think it matters. I think there's something going on in the way they practice or the way they're teaching or whatever, because this is too weird at this point for it to be just the quarterbacks. Yeah. Like, if you see something that is endemic within a position group, it can't just be the individuals in the group. That's happened to too many of the same things have happened with different guys that I no longer believe it's just the quarterbacks. Like, I don't think Jeff Sims or Chuba Purdy or Heinrich Haarberg are particularly good. Right. But Jeff Sims was not this at Georgia Tech. This is next level. For whatever his flaws were, and there were plenty, he wasn't this. And frankly, especially by the time he was in his last year at Georgia Tech, he had actually cleaned up some of the turnovers quite a bit.
Right. That was kind of the narrative was, at Georgia Tech, he was turnover prone, but as he got more experience, it got better.
And so he's reverted to worse than he was when he started at Georgia Tech as a true freshman. You can't tell me that has nothing to do with Satterfield. I don't know what's happening there. We don't see practice. We don't see tape. We don't see what they're teaching. We're not in the quarterback room with them. I don't understand how all three quarterbacks can have the exact same problems, despite the fact that Jeff Sims wasn't here before now. Heinrich Harburg was with a different coaching staff. Chuba Purdy was with a different coaching staff, both at Nebraska and at Florida State. Like, none of these guys have similar backgrounds. It's not like they're picking up the same bad habits. Like, this has to be a Satterfield thing.
When you think back to that goal line interception today, and then you think back to Minnesota, that goal line interception that
Sims threw in the back of the end zone.
Just, are we so, you and I, Ravi, are we so simplistic in our thinking to just, why are you throwing? Like, are we being too simplistic?
Here's my thing with, listen, if you want to call a pass play at the goal line, which, by the way, with the track record of Nebraska's quarterbacks this year, just don't do that. Okay? Just don't do it.
Gosh.
They had 4 interceptions today between 3 different quarterbacks. But with the track record of Nebraska's quarterbacks today, I would say, let's just not throw the ball there. But if you are going to throw the ball, okay, make it very clear, not just at the goal line, everywhere at this point. If the guy is not wide open, you're either running or throwing it away.
Throw it out of the state, like hit the fan that didn't buy the ticket and is they went out, maybe they bought the ticket and at halftime they left.
Yeah.
And they're drinking a Busch Light in the parking lot.
Yeah, hit
them in the head.
In the parking lot.
Okay.
I mean, just throw it through the upper. Like, there's no reason, especially toward the goal line, because you can just sail that thing out of the back of the end zone and it's never going to be intentional grounding.
And everything's contracted down there anyway, right?
So you're not, especially when you have guys that are not reading the field or seeing the field well. I'm not saying they can't read defenses, but they're obviously not seeing the field well. No one is, right? No one.
Nobody.
Like, maybe don't put them in situations where they have to see the field with way more bodies than there normally is in a very small area. And if you're going to, I say this all the time, and I know some people don't like it, but do the QB rollout. They only have to look at half the field. You're removing about 60% of the bodies from their vision because your offensive, defensive line, and half of the outside guys. Roll them out if you really want to make a throw. Plus, then they're outside the pocket already, so they can throw it away if it's not there, or they can run.
They're outside the tackle box.
They're outside the tackle box.
Hey.
They can take off and run, or they can throw it away. This is not that hard. And Nebraska hasn't run that on the goal line, I think, in like 6 years.
I can't recall the last time they did.
Frost never ran it because it was a huge issue I had with Adrian Martinez, who would have been perfect to run that kind of stuff. And I don't think they've run it this year either, with, again, a bunch of quarterbacks that would be perfect to run that kind of stuff. I do not understand why you don't put these guys in a position where they can use their legs and they can see the field a little bit cleaner, because you don't have to worry about all the hands and everything from the lines. So I don't get it.
So going into this game versus Michigan State, you could say that Satterfield was calling plays, technically good plays, because there were guys running around, there were guys open, and the quarterback just couldn't get it there. So now the debate becomes, is Satterfield calling the right plays technically, or does he need to recognize the toys that he has to play with, a.k.a. Heinrich Harburg?
That's not a debate, though. Like, that's not a debate, because what works in theory doesn't matter.
If you don't have guys that can't do the thing,
it doesn't matter.
That's the thing, right?
Like, so, and obviously, and that's where my real problem is, right? Either he hasn't gotten these guys in a position to be able to execute the plays he wants to call, or they're just not capable of it, and he's still trying it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, those are the only two options, really, of what's going on here, because they clearly aren't doing it. it seems like they can't do it. So either they can just don't have the abilities to do it, or they haven't been taught how to do it properly.
So, like,
the number of times they throw into triple coverage leads me to believe he's like, oh, just get it in there or whatever. I don't know what the teaching is, but like, if that's coached out of you in practice, you wouldn't see it. Like, they throw into triple coverage freaking constantly.
It's at least once a drive. It's like there's at least two guys blanketing a receiver,
which means somebody else is probably open, right? Like, if you've got 2 or 3 guys on one receiver, there's probably somebody else that at least is in a one-on-one. So to answer your question about Satterfield, it doesn't matter if the plays he calls in theory are right because they get guys open. At some point down the line, yes, like you need to be able to execute those plays. Yeah. But where Nebraska's at right now, they are not in a place where that's practical. And at this point, practical trumps theory. Like you're 10 games into the season at this point. You're 5-5. You know exactly what all 3 quarterbacks are and are not capable of. They are not capable of properly seeing a field. So it doesn't matter how open the guys are because they are not going to hit them consistently. You can't call those plays anymore.
So is it hyperbolic to say that Satterfield is probably not the long-term answer for Nebraska football? Is that too hyperbolic of me to say? Because I had said that a few weeks ago. I can't remember which game I said that after, but I'm just like, I don't see it. Because here's the thing about coaching, right? You can draw up the greatest plays ever. You can be the most savant guy. But again, if you can't recognize the players that you have on your team and cater your play calling to them, how good of a coach really are you, man?
Which, by the way, is the most important part of coaching. The most important part of coaching is being able to accurately identify what your guys are capable of and putting them in positions to do those things and only those things. That is the most crucial part of coaching.
Indeed.
Because the worst thing you can do as a coach is to constantly put guys in positions where they're most likely not going to be successful. That's not to say that they're never going to be successful, because every once in a while, Heinrich throws a zinger over the middle to Fedoni or Malachi Coleman, and you're like, oh, look at that. That's incredible.
He can do it.
He does it like twice a game, and then he throws 3 interceptions or goes 12 for 28 or whatever, right? Like, that is not a consistent thing he's capable of doing. You cannot ask him to continue to do that. And, Tom on the YouTube stream, we appreciate all the listeners chiming in on there. Tom says, O-line sucks, Satterfield sucks, and our QBs are terrible. I don't think the O-line was bad today. I thought the O-line was actually very good today. Certainly good enough to win.
Yes.
And listen, Satterfield sucking, like that's, QB's terrible. Yeah, I can,
How do you argue with that one?
Yeah. Like, should they have run the clock down, kicked a field goal, and relied on the defense like the rest of his comment says? Absolutely. I am going to push back on the O-line. The O-line played good enough to win today.
Yeah. Don't listen.
Like, I don't.
The O-line
I know they haven't had a great year. They've had.
Nope.
But to be fair, they have run blocked pretty well all year.
Yes, they have.
Like, there's been some games where you would have liked it to be a little better, but they've run blocked pretty well all year. The pass pro's been a work in progress. They had real clean pockets today. Real clean pockets.
Yes. And even last week versus Michigan State, I feel like
pretty solid.
When you're a quarterback, you also have to do your O-line favors as well.
Yeah.
It works both ways. The O-line can make your QB look good. Your QB can make your O-line look good. It goes both ways.
Your O-line is going to push guys to certain areas. You can't then run to those areas, which Harburg does constantly.
Yes.
He just runs directly into the face of a defensive end or a defensive tackle, and not great. Don't do that. You have to help. You have to be able to, like, none of those guys, I haven't seen a Nebraska quarterback yet this year climb the pocket.
Yeah.
Like, you know how every functional quarterback in the world does?
Right.
You know how I've seen like a half dozen different high school quarterbacks this year do, where you climb the pocket? It's like, okay, the rush is coming. He knows that the offensive line is going to push him to the outside. Just climb the pocket. Just come up a little bit, take a couple steps forward, and continue to scan down the field. The problem is I don't know if they panic. It seems a lot like they panic, or they just are not being taught how to do that, which, to be fair, they probably should know by now. But if they don't, you have to teach them that as, hey, QB coach, offensive coordinator, that's on you too. So to answer your question, I don't know that it's hyperbolic to say Marcus Satterfield isn't the long-term answer at offensive coordinator. I will say this. I'm a little as bad as I think he was today and as bad as I think he's been this season.
Yeah.
And I think the play calling is utterly perplexing. I think he gets way too cute. I think he thinks tries to outsmart everybody and ends up just like tying himself in. He's like a dog chasing its tail. He's like, eventually I'm going to catch this thing. And he's not going to. You're not going to catch it. We docked your tail, bud. You're never going to catch it. Like not getting there. As frustrating as that's been, and if you go back to his history at South Carolina, my answer is probably he's not the long-term answer. But I also know how disastrous the injury situation has been on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't want to say definitively, but I'm certainly leaning to, please, dear God, find someone else.
So when I'm watching games, right? We've always talked about how we want adults in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys that, like you said, with coaches, sometimes they have the tendency to get cute, to really want to earn their paycheck. Like,
want
look,
to show off how smart they are.
I am making this amount of money, and I'm going to show you
for
why.
a reason.
Because you simpletons don't get this.
It's like a little Pulp Fiction. Like, look at the big brain on Brad.
Look at that big brain on Brad. So when you watch games and you watch this offense, sometimes as a fan, you think to yourself, like, why aren't they just doing the simple, like,
the thing that's
the most
working?
obvious thing?
Yeah.
And it's just, you were hoping with this new staff that there would be less cute crap going on. And look, I'm kind of pointing my finger at Rule a little bit here because he is the CEO after all.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to be consistent with what we've been saying,
he needs to coach his coaches as much as the coaches need to coach their players.
So all I'm asking as a fan, and Ravi, I am totally embracing my role as a fan here and not as like an analyst or a radio guy that you kind of need to be neutral. I'm a fan, and I'm just like, Rule, you're supposed to be the guy that comes in here and says, knock the cute crap off.
Yeah.
Let's do the most simplistic kind of caveman. Let's run the ball, fullbacks. I know those are all buzzwords and whatever, but you watch these games and it's like, why is my mind blown right now? Why do we have 5 freaking turnovers? Why can't people just have 2 hands on the damn ball?
Yeah, I really don't understand
the basic stuff.
Because, and here's the other thing, right? So the most frustrating thing about it is people is like, oh, you can't run it that many times. Well, first of all, as I said earlier, Michigan ran the ball 32 consecutive times to end that game.
Amazing.
32 consecutive times. They did not throw a pass in the second half. If the tweet I read is correct.
You don't even need Harbaugh for that.
No, you don't. Right? So it's not even, you don't have to outsmart people. You just have to out-execute them. That's the whole thing. That's Rule's whole thing. You don't have to outsmart people. You just have to out-execute. And if you can do that, because listen, and I know people are like, oh, do you know it's not the 90s anymore? And I get that, right? But literally, and I know this for a fact because I've talked to these guys, the offensive linemen used to tell the defensive linemen across from them the play they were running.
I'm going here.
And it did not matter. Right. And listen, I get Nebraska's not in that neighborhood right now. But my point is, outsmarting people is overrated in football, right? Yes, there's times for a trick play or, for misdirection or all that kind of stuff, right? But until Nebraska can do the basic things at even a functional level, let's not try and put too many wrinkles in, because all that's doing is taking reps away from the thing you need to get functional at. And again, if you can out-execute people, it doesn't matter if they know what's coming. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like at the most basic level of football, that is the truth. Execution beats strategy every time. Now, if you've got execution and strategy, you're in really good shape, right? Then you're Alabama, right? Then you're Georgia. Then you're all those teams that win national championships and go to the college football playoff and all that stuff, right? But until you can execute the basics, you haven't earned the right to try the other stuff. What's
Yeah.
all the stuff Rule was saying at the beginning of the season? Oh, we have to earn the right to play in week 1. We have to earn the right to go to a bowl game. We have to earn the right to take the field against Minnesota and all these things.
Right.
You have to earn the right to run these cute little gadget nonsense. You have to earn the right to feel like you can throw the ball 30 times with your quarterback. You have to earn the right to do those things by executing these simple things, which they have not done all year. And I don't believe for a second it's been happening right in practice, because if you're doing it right in practice, you don't have this level of consistent bad play. Because people are like, oh, they're so inconsistent. No, they're not inconsistent. They're very consistent at being terrible.
Yes.
Like shockingly consistent at being terrible. It's astounding how consistent the quarterbacks are at being terrible.
It's amazing. We don't see practices. It's just, you see these stats and 183 rushing yards. If you look at that just offhand, you're like, okay, Nebraska did what they had to do on the ground. But for me, it's all about like the timing and like game feel.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like this offensive coordinator has a good feel for the game. And I think he just gets lost in the sauce, just like I'm lost in the sauce here. No, but I'm also not getting paid 6 figures to
7.
do this thing.
7 figures.
Is it 7? It's
I
probably
believe
7.
he's at 1.4.
Okay, well.
1.2, 1.4, something like that.
Freaking A.
He's making a lot of money to not be very good at his job. I mean,
not
to go all Clemson caller on Dabo Sweeney over here, like
Tyler from Spartanburg.
Yeah, like not to go all Tyler from Spartanburg on Marcus Satterfield here. And to be fair, I don't care what coaches make. I just care if they're good at their job.
Yeah.
This year, Marcus Satterfield has not done a very good job. Like, people point to the offensive line. Like, I think Donnie Raiola has actually done a pretty good job. Like, considering the situation he's been in and losing 2 starters, I think Newelly was back in there today.
Yeah, he was.
But you've lost 2 starters. You haven't had a ton of depth on that line. I think he's done a pretty good job.
I agree.
Like I said, they've been pretty good run blocking all year, and today, pretty clean pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty clean. And you look at it and say, yeah, I don't know that Donnie's the problem here. I don't know that the O-line's the problem. You look at the running back room, that's certainly not the problem, because they've had about 4 different guys be productive in that room this year. Gabe Ervin was productive before he got hurt.
Right.
Anthony Grant's been productive at different times, although it's hilarious now to think Anthony Grant has he's lost 2 fumbles this year. 2. That's it. He's lost 2 fumbles this year.
It just seems crazy.
Now, the one was terrible against Minnesota because of the timing, right? But now that we've seen all the stuff with the quarterbacks, you're like, Anthony Grant, incredibly ball secure. Incredible ball security.
Never fumbled.
Yeah, I mean,
never.
I mean,
Minnesota, what? What happened?
He might have the best ball security on the team at this point.
Gosh.
I'm forgetting the guy, too. Who was the other running back? Gabe Ervin. Who's the other one? Ramir Johnson. Ramir Johnson was productive this year. Gabe Ervin was productive this year. Anthony Grant's been productive this year. Emmett Johnson, like I said, I think is the best one of them.
He is. Dude, he finds holes where there's no holes.
You go look at, and okay, now let's go. I mean, Fedoni's been productive this year after not playing football for 2 years. So it's not the tight ends.
Sure.
Even though your tight end coach got fired right before the season started. Resigned.
Yeah, that's what we'll call it.
So
lost in the sauce.
I don't think it's that, right? It's not any of those. Okay, let's go to the other side of the ball. Defensive line, we like a couple of those guys. Guess what? There's 8 guys on that line that I feel great about. I never even noticed when somebody's missing. Right? Not once, right? Linebackers, Hendrick started the season injured. Reimer was injured at one point. Like, doesn't matter.
Makai Bayer. Oh, wow. Where'd he come from?
Bayer, you're up next. Let's go. Let's get it done. All right? Linebacking group, Dvorak being great. Yeah. Secondary, Deshaun Singleton's missing. Quentin Newsom's gone. Yep. Malcolm Hartzog has been beat up a a little bit, although he was back today and got beat up in a different way. Yeah. Omar Brown got knocked out of the game last week. Doesn't matter. They held Maryland, one of the better offenses in the Big Ten, to 13 points. They made Tagovailoa's day pretty difficult.
He did. Yeah,
right?
They did.
He had to throw it 40 times, still didn't catch 300 yards passing. Mm-hmm. Right? They're going to get some yards through the air because of the nature of their offense. That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. Right? They did a really good job on Maryland's offense today. So what position group have we not talked about yet? Quarterbacks. Guess who's the quarterback coach?
Marcus
Satterfield. That's the biggest inconsistency and question mark on this team. If you have a league average, not the Big Ten West average, but the league, like a league average quarterback. This team is,
oh my gosh, I don't even want to
7-3.
I mean, they're bowling. They're bowling
because they would have won Minnesota. They probably win last week against Michigan State. They probably win today.
I'll give them the.
They might be 8-2. Their 2 losses might be Michigan and Colorado. I think 7-3 at worst. If you have average quarterback play, if you have slightly below average quarterback play, I think you're 7-3. They've had utterly atrocious quarterback play.
Deep fried atrocity.
Yes, deep fried atrocities is what their quarterback play has been this year. That's the only, and they're still 5-5. They're still 5-5.
They're still 1 game away. 1 game away. Who starts next week?
I have no earthly idea. Who's the 4th string? Who's the walk-on?
It's Wojcik.
Yeah, let's get Jack Wojcik out there. I have no idea. Maybe he spent enough time on scout team that Satterfield hasn't infected him yet with the turnover bug. I don't know.
The guy who has practiced the least needs to play. needs to go, which goes against every mantra and every philosophy.
Whoever has only been hanging out with the offensive analysts and not Satterfield, that's the starter next week.
I need the quarterback.
I don't know.
That hasn't been coached by Marcus Satterfield.
Yes, that's the
quarterback's coach.
That's the guy I need. I mean, and Jason asked, at what point do you finally blame Satterfield for the turnover? I mean, most of the show basically is we've been doing that.
When did you tune in, sir?
We do appreciate you, Jason.
No,
George says, I don't think that's a real name because it's George Hallis.
R.I.P.
OL is the best unit on offense. Very well might be.
I mean, considering the injuries to wide receiver.
I think the running back room's been pretty good. I think Emmett Johnson, it's either running backs or offensive line, but those two also work very closely in tandem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
isn't that something?
Coming into this year, I liked the running back room. Like I thought they had lots of options. Well, I mean, certainly not the O-line.
The O-line, yeah, the O-line.
No, the whole thing was like, if the O-line can be functional, they'll be okay. And it's like, hey, if the quarterback room can just not actively sabotage the team, they'd be fine. That's the weirdest thing.
Are they like actively sabotaging? Are they placing bets?
I don't think we have an Iowa
Are
situation.
they Sam Deckering?
No, because here's the thing. That would mean that they're functional enough to be able to control it that way. And I don't think that's true. I don't think they're good enough to even do the bad thing on purpose. I really don't. That's where we're at as an offense.
Yeah, man, the offensive line, isn't that correct? Like they might be the most consistently good.
Yeah, consistently positive group.
Isn't that something?
Wild. It's wild.
Wow.
Because if you had told me that at the beginning of the season, I'd be like, yeah, they're winning like 8 games at least.
Donnie Raiola might be the best offensive coach
he might be.
God.
I'm
thinking of Barthel. The running back rotation has been puzzling.
Yeah, but I think they've been,
but for the most part,
solid.
Like you said,
they've been productive.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell with McGuire because of all the injuries.
Yeah, it's not fair to really
judge there.
Yeah. Raiola,
he might be the best offensive position group coach.
The whipping boy of last year.
And honestly, a lot of this year, people just kind of carried it right over.
Yeah.
And
I don't
think it's fair. I think, it's kind of the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to really, I think legitimately Raiola's done a good job. I think the offensive line has been, at the very least, pretty solid.
And just imagine,
which if the rest of the offense was pretty solid, again, they'd be at 7 wins right now.
Yeah, like if the quarterbacks were turning the ball over because the offensive line was playing poorly.
Yeah.
Then we could have a discussion.
Most of these are not strip sacks. Most of these are not strip sacks. Most of these are not, they're under so much duress that they can't see where the ball's going. Most of the interceptions, it's like a super clean pocket, and they're like, there are 3 defenders there. I think I can jam it in.
Either I'm just going to float a duck,
or I'm going to throw it so hard and so high that a defender literally sitting on the ground 10 yards behind my intended target is just going to intercept the ball.
Like this. They don't catch it like this.
No, they do this. They're like fielding punts.
So I'm going to call my shot, and I'm going to say,
yeah, who starts?
Chubba Purdy is. And here's why. Because up until the mind-boggling play call at the end on the goal line interception, I think he played very well.
He did.
When you look at Sims, yes, he had a drive or two that was nice. But again, holding the ball like a loaf of freaking bread.
Yeah.
Turning the ball over on his own side of the field. And then, of course, Heinrich Haarberg, you're going to have the injury thing, right? He's gimpy.
I've seen too much. I'm over it. I can't do it anymore.
And that's the thing.
I cannot do it anymore. Josh on YouTube says Sims and Purdy were both 4 stars out of high school. The talent is there. Coaching is purely the issue. When 3 QBs all have the same issue, it's clearly something with the coaching. And that second part is where I agree with you for sure, Josh, because it looks too similar. The errors look too similar for me to think that it's not coaching. Either something they are teaching or something they aren't correcting in practice. Like, again, you can't tell me they're not throwing it into triple coverage in practice, because otherwise, why do they keep doing it in games? There is something that's either being allowed or that's being taught that is leading to what we're seeing on the field. I'm not saying they're teaching them to throw into triple coverage, but they're either not correcting it when it happens, or they're teaching something else in the way that they read their progressions that's leading to that. And you have to fix that.
And you know what really sucks about your point there is in practice, they must be doing this.
Yeah.
This was the thing with the last staff too.
We saw it in the spring game. We've seen it in the fall. We've seen it with all the different quarterbacks. This has to be happening in practice.
Well, and like my point is with the previous staff, we were saying the same things. They're making these mistakes in the game. They must be doing it in practice too. So are they allowing it? Because surely they're not coaching it into them, right? They're not saying, hey, hold the ball like a loaf of freaking bread. No. But they must be allowing it. They must be, emboldening them to do these things without punishment. What do you do after a player fumbles the ball? Do you whip them? What do you do?
I don't think that's allowed.
Probably not.
I don't think physical punishment's allowed.
Right.
But it's honestly the best punishment, and you can credit for Bob Knight for this one. The best punishment you have is playing time.
A player's butt on the bench.
Yeah, that is the best punishment you have, is you don't get to play. If you can't do the thing I'm asking you to do, and that's why it's like, okay, so what are they asking them to do? That's where that question comes in, because obviously they're not being like, hey, you should throw it into triple coverage. That'd be super dope.
That'd be awesome.
Wouldn't it be super duper cool if you threw it into triple coverage?
Dude.
It'd be incredible. No, like obviously that's not happening, right?
Right.
So it's either something that they're just not correcting, or I'm wondering if there's something in the way they're teaching them to go through their progressions that isn't adequately preparing them to see the field the way it's happening in games. And so that's an adjustment that either needs to be made by Satterfield or by rule or whatever. And listen, the consequences have to be playing time. That's why the Haarberg thing was so frustrating to me. I get, Rule talks about last week in the press conferences, like, I get he wants to be out there and he's ready to come, he's ready to overcome his mistakes and stuff like that. He has to be ready to overcome his mistakes, because that's about all he's given you at this point is mistakes. Like, he doesn't have a lot of other options.
It's like the whole game.
Like, he doesn't have a lot of options if he ever wants to play again than to overcome his mistakes. And the problem is he doesn't overcome them. He just goes back out there and makes more mistakes.
It's in his DNA.
Just because you're willing to go back out there, that doesn't mean you're overcoming your mistakes. It just means you're like, well, let's do this again.
Bashing your head against the wall.
It kind of feels like, and this is a weird analogy, but it kind of feels like in AAU basketball, like one of the big things that people complain about is that they play so many games that they don't care that they lose. Because it's like, we're playing, they play like 5 or 7 games a day sometimes. So it's like, if you lose a couple, it doesn't really matter. And so it almost feels like that way with Haarberg, that he just makes so many mistakes that it doesn't faze him anymore, because that's all he does. I mean, at this point, he is
it's second nature.
He really has not done, outside of the long run that put him in position at the end of last week's game to score the touchdown to make it 20-17.
Yeah.
That's about the only positive thing he did last week, in a way, in any sort of real way, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And so that's 2 weeks where you have one positive play for the most part. And
that's from a player that touches the ball
every play.
Every play. Yikes.
You're talking like a 10-to-1 mistake to positive play ratio.
Oh my God.
I mean, like you're in that neighborhood.
Like I know you don't have like the exact numbers
No,
and you're kind of,
but like I'm kind of off the top of my head, like trying to think about it. I think it's like a 10-to-1 because you've got a couple interceptions both today and last week that were called back by penalty, but it's like, hey, that's still an atrocious throw and decision.
2 interceptions on one drive.
Yeah, hard to do, but Harburg found a way. It is, so, and then you've got the actual turnovers. And then you've got the other interceptable balls that are either dropped or that they get, they sail over a guy's head or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're legitimately looking at like a 10-to-1 positive to negative or negative to positive ratio on plays from Harburg. So like maybe we're done with that experiment. Like maybe we're over it.
I wouldn't be mad.
There's a reason he thought he was a tight end at the start of the year. And apparently the staff did too, because he caught a pass at Minnesota, as you like to remind people.
And look, we like to point out that the last staff, Whipple laughed him off. And like when he was winning games, it was like, oh, Whipple this, Whipple, ha, 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 whatever. But now you're beginning to see, hey, Whipple had been around a while. He's an old guy. He's seen a lot of quarterbacks in his day. Yeah.
Maybe
there's a reason why he was laughing him off.
Yeah, because no one's laughing now, but it's for a different reason. It's because we're crying. The other thing, and we can end on this unless you've got anything else you want to add, but the other thing that's really frustrating to me, especially with the quarterback situation, is, and this is more about Harburg specifically because he's played the most until today, right, is after the Purdue win, Rule was talking about, hey, like there's some things we didn't do well. Like you don't want to let things go in wins that you wouldn't in losses.
Right.
And it feels like their entire philosophy with Heinrich Harburg was, we're winning, we're going to let it go.
At least that's the way fan
it seemed.
Philosophy.
That's the way it seemed from the outside.
Right.
It seemed from the outside that they were like, since he's getting dubs, we're kind of okay with the fact that he's dribbling a lot of things down his leg. Right? Like that's how it comes off. And now all of those things came back to bite you last week against Michigan State. They obviously came back to bite you again today, not just with Harburg, but with other guys as well. It's really frustrating for the thing. Oh, gosh, Josh. Nebraska threw an interception on 20% of their passes today. I don't like that. That's too many interceptions.
That's 20% of what you don't want to do.
Yeah, that's not great. Wow. So, yeah, that's the frustrating thing for me is that Rule has specifically addressed the problem of, hey, you don't want to let mistakes go in wins if you wouldn't in a loss. And now we've got some losses to back it up. How about there's got to be some sort of accountability, not just from the players, but it's time that you have to hold Marcus Satterfield accountable as well.
Very interesting to know what that looks like exactly.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think I am, I think he was there first year at Baylor with Rule, either year 1 or year 2. I think it might have been at Temple, but I believe there was a time in which Rule took play calling away from Satterfield,
which is, this is the first time I'm hearing of this.
I think I'm going off memory here.
Okay.
From when I was looking up when Rule was hired and when he was putting his staff together. So it's been almost a year at this point. But I'm almost positive because Jeff Nixon called plays for the most part at Baylor.
Okay.
And I think he took over at one point at either early Baylor or late Temple. I think Satterfield was stripped of play calling at one point by Rule. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm going off the top of my head, so that's the caveat here.
Which is interesting because, again, I bring up South Carolina. What was the narrative? You remember the narrative. Shane Beamer.
Yeah.
The last, 3 or 4 games of the season.
When they scored their most points.
Where they were asked,
they scored
Spencer
63 against Tennessee, I think. They beat up and won against Clemson. A good Clemson team, not this year's Clemson team.
Well, but it's still Clemson.
I think they were 11-3 last year, and one of the 3 was South Carolina. Apparently, there was like a come to Jesus moment with Satterfield.
When he's coming here, it's like, whatever, guys, whatever. You're just saying
trust
this.
Well, yeah, trust Rule.
Trust Rule.
You know,
he knows
trying to.
He's worked with them before. He's got a rapport with them. They're going to work in tandem.
And now it's like,
So if it's not him, if it's not Sat calling the plays,
Garrett McGuire,
wouldn't that be a trip?
I
The
mean,
wide receivers coach, who is 17 years old. I'm exaggerating, people.
He's at least 19.
He can drink legally.
Most likely, yeah.
Wouldn't that be something?
I haven't ID'd him recently, but the way you hear Rule and people talk about Garrett McGuire, I don't think he is a long-term position coach. I think he's going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere sooner rather than later. Does he get a test run at Nebraska the last couple games of the season?
And if he does, Rule's going to talk to him and say, hey, I know you love your guys.
Run the ball, bud.
But run the ball, bud.
He's like,
He's
like, I know more than anything that we're playing like 4 true freshmen and Billy Kemp out there. Like, maybe we just run the ball. Excuse me, 3 true freshmen and Billy Kemp.
Yeah.
My bad.
3 of them.
And Billy, like, that's the receiving core at this point. 3 true freshmen, Billy Kemp, and walk-ons. Like, that's the room. He's like, yeah, no, coach, I get this. I don't want you throwing to my guys either.
It's just, it's
wild. It's wild to think about.
People have given Iowa fans a lot of crap because, hey, their special teams and defense, they score all the points.
Dear God, I wish our special teams and defense would score points for us.
But that's where we're at, man, is we are hoping for a Quentin Newsom pick 6 or a Omar Hitstick Brown hits the ball at dude's hands.
I know.
And old boy runs it back for a tutty. Like, that's what we're hoping for.
I'm hoping for anything
as long as the quarterback of the team doesn't touch the ball is what we're hoping for.
Yeah, we're to the point where I want the QB to have as little to do with the outcome of the game as possible.
Just go Wildcat with Emmett. Is that what we're saying? Go Wildcat.
Just run. I've said this all year. Wow. 12 to 15 passes a game tops, and that feels high now.
I said if they get into 30, I'm going to puke. Now it's double digits. If it's 10.
I said 20. I was like, if they throw 20 times, I'm going to get nauseous. They threw 21 today, at least of actual pass attempts. I think there was I'd have to look up the sack stats to know how many were called. But 10 of 21.
Well, I don't recall too many sacks.
I don't remember a ton of sacks.
Remember the O-line
did pretty good.
Felt like it was good.
I'm going to look here.
And the O-line is one of those positions where you kind of look at it.
It's like harder to evaluate than some of the more counting stats positions.
Right.
I'm going to try and find real quick here how many sacks Maryland had. 1. They had 1 today. So
there you go.
That would indicate that, again, the offensive line did, in fact, play well.
They did play well.
Just more than the eye test. I thought they played really well. So, yeah, I'll have to go back and check on that Satterfield thing, but I'm almost positive that when I was researching his staff as they were coming in and possible offensive coordinators, possible position coaches, stuff like that, that I read that at one point, and again, I don't remember if it was at Temple or Baylor. He wasn't with them at Baylor very long, if at all, because he took a head coaching job at a small school. So it was probably Temple, but I believe he took play calling away.
And I know we want to wrap up, but I just want to go back to the best offensive sequence of the day was Javin Buddha Wright gets the interception.
Mm-hmm.
This was Maryland's first drive of the second half.
Yep.
I recall the offense running downhill.
Yes.
Downhill.
Yes.
Downhill.
Yep.
Emmett Johnson, Anthony Grant, downhill,
Jeff
and then
Sims,
the underround.
I believe, yeah.
And then the end around with Janirin Bonner for the touchdown.
To be fair, I also thought it was an idiotic play call.
Right.
They had 2nd and 1 they had 2nd and goal from the 1. It was like, hey, why don't we just tush push this thing 3 times again in the end zone?
And even the run itself, it was it had to be bounced out.
Yeah, Janirin Bonner had to make a crazy play to get there because he was sort of dead to rights in the backfield and he made a play. So, good on Janirin Bonner. I thought we'd see more of him this year, and we haven't a ton, so I was happy to see that.
He was my dude before this season.
It was my X Factor guy.
Yeah.
But I even thought that play call was idiotic.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, you're at the 1 yard line with 3 chances to score a touchdown. Just like, when we push that booty right in the end zone.
But leading up to that, it was the downhill
run,
Boom.
downhill run, downhill run.
And it was working.
Yeah, just do the thing that works. And stop doing the thing that makes us all want to pull our hair out and lose our minds, which is anything involving the quarterbacks. I will allow some quarterback run. That's what I'm okay with. Some. Although I guess it's with Purdy now. He's more mobile than I thought, and he didn't fumble today. So
he did not fumble.
He did throw
no.
horrifying interception, but didn't fumble today. So, and he had 3 carries for 33 yards. Like, I'll take that. I think he provides a little bit more element of surprise because they never think he's going to run it.
And he kind of looks kind of goofy when he runs.
Yeah, but he's reasonably quick, and he was decisive. Like,
yeah,
he got going. He wasn't like. That's the thing that's kind of been weird about Harburg. Is there's he kind of seems like he's frozen a little bit in the backfield on some of those QB runs the last few weeks. I don't know if he's banged up. I don't know if he's just indecisive. Talked about him thinking too much.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I can't keep doing this like mentally. I am not a mentally healthy.
Are you okay?
God no. I am not a mentally healthy enough person to continue to watch the quarterbacks play this way.
Yeah, I am mentally fragile. It is. I don't need to be watching this crap show.
Satterfield, for the collective mental health of the state, you have to stop. You have to. Like, that is my plea. I'm sure he's listening.
Hey, it's not up to him, I guess. It's got to be up to somebody else on this coaching staff.
It could be up to him to stop doing the things that he's doing. That would be lovely.
Well, you could also argue that he's probably been doing these tendencies for a lot of his coaching career.
Sure.
And if you're right about the Baylor thing, getting plays taken away, then it's like, he's got a precedent here.
True.
And maybe South Carolina fans were right. And I don't like saying that.
I hate to admit that. I hate giving SEC fans any sort of credit for anything. But I would really love it for the collective mental health of everyone in Nebraska. Please stop, Marcus. That's all I'm asking.
Running the ball is my therapy.
Coach Rule, if you're listening, do what needs to be done here.
Emmett Johnson didn't have 2 yards per carry. Okay.
No, 4.9. That's pretty good.
So
the team in general, over 4 yards a carry.
Can I ask you what's wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with that?
It's honestly, I think it is.
Is that not enough? Is that do we need 8? We need 8 or else.
4.6 yards a carry for the team on 40 rushes. 40 rushes for 4.6 yards per carry.
That's a big sample size.
That's a terrific number. Now let's do those carries to 60, and we'll be fine.
Well, at the very least, make it 45, because again, it's all about timing. It's all about game feel with me. Yeah. There are certain situations where you should have ran there. And I know hindsight is 20/20.
It wasn't even hindsight. We're saying it in the moment.
I know.
We're saying it's not hindsight.
I know. Settle for the 3, and it's usually I'm not that guy where I'm settle for the 3. Let's be conservative. I hate that for the most part, but knowing who your quarterbacks are.
Yeah, it's a self-awareness thing, not just with who Nebraska is, but who his quarterbacks are. Gosh. All of it is a self-awareness thing. And honestly, the only thing wrong with running the ball that much is some offensive coordinators' egos cannot handle it.
Yep. That's
really the only thing. If you're doing it successfully, which they were, 4.6 yards a carry, 40 carries, that's a good number. You would take that all day.
Marcus Satterfield, I promise you, if you stick with the run game,
the chances
we will view you as a man, like a Renaissance man, if you will.
Yeah.
You are a man earning your paycheck because, again,
you're not doing the thing that is necessary
to win.
In
fact, you are doing the good coaching thing.
Yes.
Just because you can draw up cute plays like the previous guy who we had as head coach, he could draw up plays for miles. The dude was an excellent first play drive script.
The concept, again, it's like you said, the same thing with the previous staff. Honestly, I think it's the same thing with Satterfield because guys are running open, right? But play concept doesn't mean diddly. if your guys can't execute it. That's it. That's the whole story.
There it is.
All right, that is the post-game spread for this week. A little bit of therapy there.
Not enough, man. I'm still like
Nebraska fans, call your therapist, talk it out. Just do whatever you need to do. It's
I gotta stop cussing.
It's another one of those. It's another one of those weeks. You can listen to Jared on the No Block No Rock podcast. You can listen to me every weekday morning on Hurrdat Sports Radio, 7 to 10 a.m. Go Big Red.
One more.
Just please get one more win. I just need one more win.
Wisconsin, break the streak.
Please.
Break the streak.
Just one more win.
Do it for the veterans.
GBR.
Even though they didn't already. They blew it.